he was not comparing himself to Dante and St. Augustine, but I certainly will. Walker Percy is the best Catholic writer of the 20th century, probably the best Catholic writer in a long, long time. If the novelist doesn't make it interesting, doesn't entertain you, he's failing. So he's very entertaining, he's very interesting, he's unique. His uniqueness lies in the fact that he himself says, and I agree 100%, the job of the writer is not to edify you. It's not to make you feel good, to make you feel happy. It's to diagnose the problem in society as it is. Well, guys, welcome back to Maple Syrup History, Maple Singularity Syrup History.
Keeps it back. They try to.
Yeah, it's time for Maple Syrup History.
Adobe. That's right.
So guys, I want to start this when this is being recorded later, when this is on the recording. This is a combined multi-class thing. All you ever want to know about Walker Percy or something like that. I don't know how I'm going to title this, but you see it now on YouTube what the title is. But I want to start with page 186 through 211. It's the most important part of the book, for real. From facts. That's where you stopped?
I stopped at 200.
Well, perfect. Well, then you got to the main part. From facts to fiction, and the second chapter is something like physician as scientist, physician as novelist. All right, so the book we're discussing, all you ever want to know about Walker Percy, I've talked about many Walker Percy books besides. On this entire combined episode, I'm going to be talking about other Walker Percy stuff to close. And to close, C-L-O-S-E, in perhaps street clothes, C-L-O-T-H-E-S. Perhaps in front of a garbage bin for aesthetics. We'll see. Why would I do that? Because I want to. That's basically why. Now we'll talk about moviegoer Thanatos syndrome, lost in the cosmos. All you Vandal Catholics, we've had that in these courses before. This is Maple Syrup History, like 370 almost, in all these hundreds of episodes over the past 7 years. Talked about lost in the cosmos multiple times. All you want to know about Walker Percy. This whole episode is on this one book, Signposts in a Strange Land, which says in the back, at his death in 1990, Walker Percy left a considerable legacy of uncollected nonfiction. All right, well, that's what this is, right? But if you want to know all about Walker Percy, I mean, you see the transition happen in the video for me wearing this blue suit. I think last week I was wearing a tan suit. I'm actually going back in time. I'm recording today on March 31st. That's how this video will start. Go back to the 24th and back to the 31st again. So I'm just going to open this most important section, turn the video off, get that into like pre-production. That sounds so pretentious. I'm just going to have it like on my computer. And ready to kind of like move around. And then we'll do the first part, which is the first 100 pages covered last time. And then we'll close out the rest of the book. All you want to know about Walker Percy, page 186 through 211, who this guy was. Again, off the top of the bat, I think I said this last week, so I'll say it again in this stream. He's from the South, studies to be a physician, gets tuberculosis, is bedridden, reads a bunch of existentialists, Kierkegaard and Dostoevsky and Albert Camus, and transitions from an MD career. He was an MD. If you see in this collection of letters, he signed some letters, Walker Percy, MD. He was a doctor. He made it all the way into either his residency or even practice, whatever. He contracted tuberculosis because when he was at Bellevue Hospital in New York, he was charged with overseeing tuberculosis patients, especially in the lab, working with samples of tuberculosis. What a terrible thing at the time. Oh, happy fault that merited for us such a glorious Redeemer. Often things that are bad are turned by God to good. He says it's a blessing in disguise. trampolined him in his career as a novelist. His most famous book is The Moviegoer. I'm actually teaching that in a different place right now, Moviegoer. Like, Life is a Funny Thing. Taught The Moviegoer many times. Great novel. That's who Walker Percy is. But if you want to know all about what his deal is, here is what it is, as you'll hear me read the next 20 pages. Walker Percy believes the goal of the novelist is to be a diagnostician. The goal of the novelist is like a doctor. Doctor, my arm hurts. Why? Here's why. Doctor, I can't sleep. Well, here's what we can do about your insomnia. What is it like to be a person living in the 20th century? Of course, Percy's life is 1916 through 1990. But we can say, what's it like being a person alive in the 21st century? We're now into the second quarter of the 21st century in 2026. Because he says in all of his reading, like, he read Hegel, and he's like, Hegel told Kierkegaard criticized Hegel, that Hegel had told us everything about humanity except what it's like to be a man who's alive and must die. That's what Walker Percy's entire writing is about. What is it like to be alive, and how do you live life? And you have to die, and what is the meaning of life and death and all those kind of things? Of course, Percy, being a practicing Catholic, answers that with Catholic orthodoxy. That beautiful prayer to Our Lady, the pilgrims in this valley of tears, the Hail Holy Queen prayer. That's what we are, he says. We are pilgrims. We are passing through this life. It's not our true home. We are lost in the cosmos. This is his great self-help parody says. And it is the job of the novelist, which he says might be more important work than MIT and NASA combined, because all the STEM fields are great, but they're just very kind of like of the world. He's a huge fan of science. So I love about him too. He's not one of these religious writers who's like, science is a lie, science is, no, he loves science. But science can only answer like the nuts and bolts of everydayness. What does it mean to be alive? The ultimate questions. And he answers it as diagnostician. Here we go. Ready? Let's just get after this crazy psycho style. It is hardly a momentous or typical story. A physician turned writer become novelist, but is perhaps the nature of the beast. No writer finds his vocation typically. Okay, perhaps the only moral of the story is that a serious writer is a peculiar bird who has to find his own way, his own time, and who would better be left alone to do so. He talks about why he liked science. It is not merely the truth of science that makes it beautiful, but its simplicity. Under the microscope, the test tube, one could actually see the beautiful theater of disease. You measure the effect of treatment on the disease process. But he says, right, he's like here, when he was at the hospital, the same scarlet tuberculous I used to see lying crisscrossed like Chinese characters in the sputum and lymphoid tissue of patients at Bellevue. Now I was one of them. And when he says, when he's bedridden for a couple years, recovering from tuberculosis, what began to interest me was not so much a different question as a larger question. Not the physiological, pathological processes within man's body, but the problem of man himself. The problem of man himself. The nature and destiny of man. Specifically and more immediately, the predicament of man in a modern technological society. How appropriate is that for today? Guys, put down Flannery O'Connor. Put down C.S. Lewis. Stop this nonsense. Read Walker Percy. The problem of man in a modern technological society. What is Pope Leo's great encyclical going to be about? Who knows? It's coming out soon. What is Pope Leo going to talk about? Who knows? Wow, I'm so embarrassed that I know you guys. It's terrible. I can't believe you don't know this. He's going to talk about AI. He's going to talk about AI. He's very much so far the AI Pope, anti-AI Pope. God bless him. The problems of AI. Is this not more appropriate than today? The problem of man himself in a modern technological society. We're, subsumed up to our eyeballs in AI and Chat GPT, whatever. All the more so. If the first great intellectual discovery of my life was the beauty of the scientific method, surely the second was discovery of the singular predicament of man in the very world which has been transformed by science. It's awesome. I'm reading from page 188. Sarah, you have the exact same book already. You have the same one. I'm sure this is the most popular. So we're on the exact same page. His first great discovery in life was science, the simplicity and beauty, the musical, next note, perfectly organized reality of science. But he says that's insufficient for the ultimate questions. His great second discovery is the problem of man himself. And here's my point earlier. Hegel, said Kierkegaard, explained everything under the sun except one small detail. What it means to be a man living in the world who must die. Right. And then he talks about how his moviegoer novel on page 189 was this great breakthrough, right? And he says here, some people would ask him, like, how could you write two books that were, It's always funny when writers talk about books that are so bad. I bet those 2 books were fine, but they weren't hits, right? How could you write 2 books that weren't publishable, but now this moviegoer takes over the world? It did. The moviegoer beat out the way more famous Joseph Heller Catch-22 for the 1962 National Book Award. That is about as close to the Nobel Prize in Literature as I think you can get. Getting a National Book Award, whatever, from different countries. It's a huge deal. It's a huge award. If I told you Walker Percy was a Nobel laureate in literature, you would fall on the floor and okay, I got to get all of his stuff. That is the ultimate plum prize. But National Book Award is not that far off. That's a pretty big deal as well. That made him famous. Did he ever win it again? Absolutely not. They're like, once is enough. But he says here, I can only report that something did happen and did happen all of a sudden. It was a breakthrough, right? And he talks about the necessity of, working through. He's talking more about kind of novelist, qua novelist. One begins to write not as one thinks he is supposed to write, not even like the great models one admires, rather to write as if he were the first man on earth ever to set pencil to paper. Very cool. When he wrote The Moviegoer, by the way, what is The Moviegoer about? Anyone know what The Moviegoer is about? I'll tell you the story, but you read it long ago? You should reread it. I can tell you The Moviegoer in 1 minute. Ready? Moviegoer is the story of Binks Bowling, a 30-year-old stockbroker, almost 30. He's 29. He turns 30 at the end of the book. 30-year-old stockbroker living in New Orleans who is really good at making money, loves women, but all his relationships are kind of transient. He just asks secretaries out to the movies. They go to the movies and he asks someone else out. He likes making money, he likes women. His life is meaningless, empty. But the solutions around him have worn thin, as Percy talks about. He's not really religious. He even says he's a Catholic in name only. His mom, or his aunt is this kind of stoic, grand stoic lady about doing your duty like Marcus Aurelius. No, thank you. Don't you want anything great with your life? No, not really. He goes to the movie. It's called The Moviegoer because he goes to the movies to distract himself from life. But he's aware the entire time that he has the possibility of going on the search. To be aware of the search is to be onto something. Not to be aware of the search is to be in despair, he says. And Binks throughout the story will eventually go on a search. He has this great rant at the end of the book, H30. The only thing you can recognize is beep, 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 bleep, expletive bleep. It's Holy Week, so I'm going to bleep myself out. But all he recognizes is all the BS in the world. But it's a happy ending. He ends up, he's going to marry his cousin. I know it sounds haha. His cousin Kate is not really, he's his step cousin. If you're wait a second, it's not actually his cousin. But Kate is his great love story throughout. Kate is a very damaged character, PTSD'd. She was engaged to another guy who died before their wedding night in a car crash. And there's a lot of this kind of wayfarer stuff. It's a positive ending. Binks is going to go on the search. He's going to, marry Kate. He's going to commit. He's going to stop movie going, which they would be doom scrolling through, internet, whatever. And he's going to enter medical school. So maybe there's some autobiographical note there. But it's Percy's most famous novel. His best novel, I think, is Love in the Ruins. I'll talk about that in Street Clothes in Front of a Garbage Can later on this stream. But anyways, yeah. So what one ends up doing with one's life is surely one of God's mysteries, and a good deal of luck, good and bad luck involved, as well. I firmly believe God's providence. And he says, you come into your vocation. Who among us is doing what he, she dreamed of doing when he, she was 8, 12, 16? Perhaps it is just as well we are not. At 12, I wanted to fly to the Pacific because Lindbergh had flown the Atlantic. Okay. About the moviegoer, last point here, he says that he discarded the old style of plot and whatever in writing the moviegoer and just tried to do this thing that he's talking about. When I say his thing, I mean his whole approach to stuff. The novelist's job is to diagnose the problem of modern man in his predicament. He writes here, when I sat down to write the moviegoer, I was very much aware of discarding the conventional notions of a plot instead of characters, discarded because the traditional concept of plot and character itself reflects a view of reality which had been called into question. Rather, I would begin with a man who finds himself in a world, a very concrete man, Binks Bowling, who is located in a very concrete place and time, New Orleans, Louisiana. Such a man might be represented as coming to himself, in somewhat the same sense as Robinson Crusoe came to himself on his island after his shipwreck, with the same wonder and curiosity. That's the hope for Binks throughout the novel, to go on the search, to be aware of something greater, grander, or whatever. To not just be bogged down. He talks about actually the insufficiency of science, which Percy loves. At one point, it's Binks is doing this kind of internship, and instead of paying attention to what's going on in the petri dish, all he sees is people playing touch football outside. And That's the sort of the wonder of creation, moving, running, throwing. People have hands, 5 fingers, the sunlight. Like, and this isn't some kind of, Percy was 100% Catholic. This is not some kind of Buddhist, like modern American Buddhist, sit on a bench and watch pigeons all day and contemplate, whatever. It's not that. There are people who have that kind of philosophy. You need to drop out of life, sit on a bench, and let the one come to you, enlighten you about illuminate. Like, that's not what he's saying at all. Just being aware of kind of what life is on a deeper level. Physician as novelist, etc., blah, blah, blah. I am speaking of, page 192, I am speaking of a rather more typical denizen of the age who believes as part of the very air he breathes that natural science is all the truth, and the rest, religion, humanism, art, is icing on the cognitive cake. Attractive icing, but icing nonetheless. Let's identify the problem. We live in an era, right, where scientism is the religion, sadly. It's an idolatrous, thing of science. And so he says, Binks goes, is in this world, this character from the moviegoer again. What happens to him is that in the very anxiety of his despair, this despair that everything is just kind of like, a number, a figure, an algorithm, scientific, and all his needs are met. I'm so happy. He does that rant in the moviegoer. The world is so happy and awesome, and everyone wins. Everyone prospers like a dung beetle. Like, all your needs are met, and you're just dead inside. You're dead, right? It occurs to him that a search is possible. So the novel, almost by accident, became a narrative of the search, the quest. We can say all of Percy's works are about the search, the identification, the diagnosis of our problem in our modern AI society, searching for higher truth. Ultimately, Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and life himself, and the truths flowing from the way God ordered things in this non-chaotic, rather logical, and attuned towards the ultimate beatific vision way. Us being poor pilgrims in this valley of tears, just passing through to our true home. Percy, what I love about him too, he's so not preachy. He's so not, in his novels, in fact, actually are very vulgar and offensive often, and his characters are very kind of bad Catholics. Binks is a nominal Catholic. Dr. Thomas More, the parody on St. Thomas More, Love in the Ruins, is a terrible Catholic, fallen away. He's a polygamist. Like, he's an awful person. I like that he writes kind of like the struggle of people on the search. Not, here's Tommy Goodboy, and he's just a great Catholic, and he always listened to his mommy, and like, he doesn't write stuff like that. And so the novel, almost by accident, landed squarely in the oldest tradition of Western letters, the pilgrim's search outside himself, rather than the guru's search within. All this happened to the novelist and his character at the slightest consciousness of a debt to St. Augustine or Dante. If you like St. Augustine, if you like Dante, I like them, but we did a whole year of St. Augustine. I've read Divine Comedy cover to cover once by the Rainy Park Pool. I think I told you about this, my favorite pool in the world. Really, built in the Great War, epic, so grimy, like just, corrugated, rusty fence, just like something out of, like, in 1970, maybe like 1830. I don't know, it's so old and decrepit. It's the perfect place to read Dante. And especially the Purgatorio sections. And, I like them both. Most Catholics, I would agree. St. Augustine and Dante, you're at the very cream of the crop of kind of Catholic thinkers and writers. Yeah, I think Percy, he's not being arrogant. He's a worthy successor to that in some way. This pilgrim's story. Listen to this, guys. The pilgrim's search outside himself rather than the guru's search within. The reason why we're going to end this book today, and even if I just this one section, is this is the whole book. Everything else is kind of tangential points and stuff, right? That I encourage you to read, but they're not. This is the whole heart of the matter. The Western Catholic position always is, truth is not within you, it is outside of you. You are not your own Savior. Christ is. He come down. Now, yes, right? It's in the Bible. The kingdom of God is within you, of course. And we have this interior life. What I'm saying is, like, we are not the Savior. Christ is. His church is outside of us. How do we attain salvation? The sacraments, accepting Christ, being other-focused. What's Matthew 25? I was hungry, gave me food, thirsty, gave me drink, how to treat others. Eastern philosophy often is just the guru's interior search. Go on a mountain, sit in silence, sit in darkness, and you'll be illuminated. The truth is always within you. You are your own guru. A Buddha himself said, look not to me, but my dharma, like my teaching, and be lights unto yourselves. That's not Christianity. Buddhism and Christianity are often, seen as similar. They could not be more radically different. Buddhists and Christians both agree there's a lot of suffering in the world, but the Buddhist response of nirvana and self-extinction is radically different from the beatific vision, the hope of the individualistic personal heaven with God. It's completely radically different. And Catholics and Buddhists can respect each other, like monks can respect each other in their renouncement of things like, amen, praise God. whatever is true is good, and St. Justin Martyr said whatever is true is ours, part of the one singular truth of God. But the Eastern Buddhist philosophy, anyone ever see Eat, Pray, Love, is radically different than the Dante moviegoer pilgrim search. The Eat, Pray, Love model, the modern kind of like guru model, is everything you have is with you. You are the apex. You are the best. All about you. Just look to yourself. You have all the answers. The Westerns are, you don't have the answers. You're blind. You're going about in the darkness. You need a guide. And the guide is the church, ultimately pointing to Christ, the sacraments. So the pilgrim search outside himself. Binks does not go and go on some guru trip. He's looking for that ultimate truth. Like all artists, 195, he is interested not in edifying, but in discovering and pointing out, naming certain sectors of reality, both within oneself and outside oneself, which have gone unnoticed, whereupon he, the novelist character, is free, as only a man can be free to act accordingly. Guys, so legit. Don't do cheesy, stupid movies, novels, or just being nice. That's not your job, all of you grand artists. Like all artists, he is interested not in edifying, but discovering and pointing out and naming. What is Walker Percy's work about? That it's not about edifying, making you feel good. I've read Percy's works sometimes and laughed so hard my stomach hurt. It was so freaking funny. There are some parts of Love and Runes I will not repeat in public that are so freaking funny. It's painful. They're so genius. They're so incredibly. I don't know. I'm struggling to find the words. He's the best Catholic author in the past 100 years. Yes, better than Chesterton. Yeah. Sorry, Chesterton. What I'd say to Chesterton's face, yeah. I'd be like, sorry, man. Well, he was so spacey, Chesterton. He's always like whatever they did in 18 whatever, telegraphed his wife or whatever they did, text or telegraph. He doesn't even know what train station he's at. He probably would forget my criticism in 5 seconds anyway, so whatever. Yeah, I'd say it. Percy's the absolute best Catholic author. Giving a shout out and props to our man, G.K. Chesterton, whose book was a brilliant book, Everlasting Man, which we recently covered. Lost in the Cosmos, Walker Percy, is the sequel to Orthodoxy. It's the sequel. Read Orthodoxy, read Lost in the Cosmos. 1908, 1983, respectively, is the sequel.
Mother's doctor. Remember that? We'll get out of school or something. Sorry, Epstein's mother's doctor.
Guys, today we're doing starting Walker Percy. We're going to take our time with this book as long as we need. So, looking ahead, today is March 24th. We have it for the 31st, then April 7th and 14th for sure, those 4 classes. And then on April 21st, the encyclical 1902 from Leo the 14th on the Holy Eucharist is the last class. It's a review of end of April, but we'll kind of play it by ear, and I'm probably not going to post anything to the channel until I combine all of these into one long episode. I want to go out, with fireworks, 40 hours on Walker Percy. Anyone know anything about Walker Percy before I start? Who is Walker Percy? Who is the author? Anyone new? Again, maple syrup history, extra facts. We do know. Last year we did Year of St. Augustine. This year has been Christian classics books. This is the last book we're reading. In addition to the 8 Leonine encyclicals we've read, Mere Christianity, Everlasting Man, and Lord of the World. This is our 4th and final book. We're going to spend 4 weeks on it. Who is this guy, our last author? Who is Walker Percy? What do you know about him?
He died in 1990.
He died in 1990. He's from the South. Back cover, fair enough. No. You're right though. Time out. That's great. I've never heard of him. I picked this up and read about. Okay, let me tell you about him. I think that Walker Percy is the best Catholic author. Just period. I mean, maybe Dante is better. But in terms of American Catholic writers, for whatever reason, I think that she is awesome. And you know who I'm going to talk about. I think Flannery O'Connor is awesome. I really do. I think she's amazing. For some reason, she's super famous. I don't understand why. What I mean is these two things do not meet up together. These things do not work together. That modern Catholic media is very, very vanilla. It is. It's very kind of nice and be nice. And now this doesn't, talk about the nasty undercurrent on Twitter and kind of the fighting. I'm saying mainstream Catholic media in general is positive stories. Tell me how did you come back to the faith? Tell me your testimony. These are all good things. But Flannery O'Connor is a gruesome and brutal writer. She is brutal. Her stories are filled with the most gruesome, horrifying stuff. If you went into a modern Catholic university, Steubenville, and wrote a Flannery O'Connor story, and they would accuse you of, I think anyways, of like, this is not, you definitely get, I think, a lot of reaction. This is not appropriate. This is not like Christian and uplifting. I mean, so I just, that's my whole point. I think Flannery O'Connor is great. She shows the reality of sin. She's a fantastic stylist. She herself was a Southern writer. Flannery O'Connor, 1925 through 64, Georgia. But again, I don't understand her kind of like the infatuation because of those two things. But it is what it is. Flannery O'Connor is fine. Chesterton is great, of course. Chesterton is way more of the tenor of our modern Catholic culture, I think. Generally very kind of positive. I don't want to say a blue skies writer, but kind of, whatever. And then, of course, we, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis, who is not Catholic, but he's still kind of like horseshoed in. Walker Percy is very overshadowed. I think he's the best. I think Walker Percy is the best. And if you're like, who should care about my opinion? Yeah, that's nobody, fine. But at least I can say to my credit, I'm not just saying this like some guy who, again, wears a Flannery O'Connor shirt with a quote on it, has never read Flannery. I've read a lot of Walker Percy. In addition to this book that we're working through now, I would say start perhaps with The Moviegoer. It's the book that won him the National Book Award in 1962. It's a very good book. His funniest book is Love in the Ruins, I believe, about Dr. Thomas More. We talked about this kind of angelism and bestialism, this lapse meter that he invents. He writes the last self-help book, parody of self-help, called Lost in the Cosmos, that Peter Kreeft famously said he thinks is like this one of two books that he would take as a desert island read. The other one is like Abolition of Man. Anyways, so I think Walker Percy is the best. Why? I think Walker Percy is hilarious. He's truly funny, not in the way people say, this person's so funny, but they're not actually. He's actually very, very funny. He's very rooted. He is from the South, grew up in Mississippi with his Uncle Will. If you read, we're reading about the first 100 pages today. But lived in Athens, Georgia for a while, right? And then he really, as he says, I was a Louisianan by choice. Moves to Covington, Louisiana. Lives and dies there. Most famous, again, I'd say for his novels, 6 novels. The Moviegoer, his debut novel, the most famous. But he's just a great writer overall. And I'm excited to get into some of his thoughts. And we're just going to look at this stuff and talk about it as we always do. Right? Maple syrup history, I let the author speak for himself, herself, as much as possible. If we were doing Flannery O'Connor in this class, I would let her speak for herself. Like we'd put the text and we'll just analyze it. I've got my pink notes. And as you see here, I've got section 1, X, start of the book, to approximate page 100. Right? And then I've got 331 written for the next class. I haven't done that yet. But try to get through 100 pages. Let's talk about what this is. Last preamble, Signpost in a Strange Land is a collection of Walker Percy's nonfiction essays. He's primarily a novelist. These are nonfiction essays. This is not a manuscript book. This is a collection of stuff. If you see at the end, all of us seem to have the same version. At the end of each thing, it shows the year that he wrote it in. So there's stuff from like 1957, 1985. All of this is outdated now. It's crazy. Like I said, I was born in 1987. That seems like the 90s was not that long ago, that kind of thing. 2000 is still very much yesterday. Well, 2000 was 25 years ago, 26 years ago now, right? So this stuff, Percy was born in 1916, I believe. This stuff from the 50s and 60s is kind of outdated. And yet, as all good writing is, kind of timeless quality. All right, he starts off with, why I live where I live. Total placement for a writer would be to live in a place like Charleston or Mobile. Such places are haunted. Faulkner managed to do it only by drinking a great deal and by playing little charades, like pretending to be a farmer. Total non-placement would be to do what Descartes did, live anonymously among the burghers of Amsterdam, or what Kierkegaard did, live in the business district of Copenhagen, pop out into the street every half hour, speak to the shopkeeper so no one thought. So one will be thought an idler, okay? And it pleased Kierkegaard to be an idler at the very time he's turning out 5 books a year. All right, he talks about the sense of place in the South. Do you agree? Covington, Louisiana, not too far, I think across from Lake Pontchartrain, New Orleans. Does the South have a sense of place? He's talking about he chooses Louisiana because it has a place. It's not total placement, total non-placement, right? He opens up this chapter. The reason I live in Covington, Louisiana is not because it was listed recently in Money as one of the best places in the U.S. to retire. The reason is not that it is a pleasant place, but rather it is a pleasant non-place. Covington is in the deep south. We're supposed to have a strong sense of place. It does. But Covington occupies a kind of interstice in the south that falls between places. A non-place in certain relation to a place, New Orleans, a relation allows one to avoid the horrors of total placement or total non-placement or total misplacement. You agree? Is he just being like fancy with words and obnoxious? Or like, he chooses to live in Covington, Louisiana. It's close to a real place, New Orleans. But I don't know, maybe it allows him to stay amongst the pine trees and write. What do you think of that first chapter? Do you have good points or not? I promise my questions will not get any deeper than that today. Just I'm going to read you stuff you wrote and you tell me what you think. What do you think?
That made sense.
Why did it make sense?
Well, he's not from that particular area, so he wasn't just part of the long-standing families there. I think he just wanted to be an observer and not necessarily be tied into anything. So he found a place that wasn't, where he could just kind of be free.
Okay.
Well, this one sentence got me, it's necessary to escape the place of one's origins and the ghosts of one's ancestors, but not too far. I pondered that for a while. Why is that necessary?
Do you agree, disagree?
I don't know.
Ernest Hemingway, A Movable Feast. Another great Catholic writer, Hemingway, I'm not joking. Both on the great and Catholic. A lot of people don't know that Hemingway was Catholic. I think he self-admitted like he was, a work in progress very much. Or he wouldn't uphold himself as a model Catholic and good for his humility, but Hemingway was a Catholic. He talked about being in Paris. He's like, I can never write about northern Michigan when I was there, but I could in Paris. I can never write about Paris while in Paris. Like you have to kind of distance from the spot, whatever it is. I think really The Movable Feast is Hemingway's memoir of the lost generation, his time in Paris in the 1920s when he was married to Hadley Richardson. I think he wrote that later in retrospective, proving his point, kind of, getting away from like the haunted space of the present. But yeah, here he's talking about more ancestors, etc. Let's talk about that right away. And he talks about this in different essays. Southern writers talk about the South as a haunted place. Like it is a place like the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Civil War past. Whatever, the everywhere, every town, whatever, this small battle, this skirmish, this, potentiality, this kind of like mythology of the South. And Percy bemoans the loss of that. He's talking about his chapter on the changing South. He's like, a president is Southern and people don't even bat an eye. Who's he talking about during that essay?
Was it
Carter, yeah. Jimmy Carter's from Georgia. He wrote that essay in 1978, we'll get to in a second. He's talking about, there's a Southerner, Jimmy Carter, who's in the Oval Office and no one cares. This was unthinkable, 100 years ago. Because the South is so steeped in that land of bayous and, mint juleps and the romance, the music, the bluegrass music, the sound of just the crickets, whatever, all this kind of stereotypical stuff. The dirt roads, stuff that country music has really kind of glammed off of for a long time. So perhaps he's saying to get some perspective on this, you have to kind of, move away a little bit. I don't know. He says this with the Civil War, the 100-year rule, which is a rule historians do often follow. You shouldn't talk about a conflict until 100 years have passed. Now is when the best World War I books should be coming out. Because the First World War ended, Armistice Day 1918, 108 years ago. Enough time has passed, hopefully. I myself am writing a book on the First World War about people on the Palouse during the First World War. I'm dead serious. I'm not kidding at all. And it's not, as you know, most of my publications are fiction. I'm by far primarily a fiction writer. But it's a nonfiction, my second historical book. I've been really mining the Argonaut and Evergreen, the two newspapers at the time. Both are digitized back to 1892 and 1898, respectively. Yeah, it's very cool. I've got the first chapter written. And it's I hope I have something new to say about, how young men, young women at that time, at what was then WSC and the U of I, felt about enlisting, whatever, because 100 years have passed. And we know enough about what these things meant later. Something in there. Listen to what it says here on page 5. The total freedom of writers in this country can be distressing. What a burden to bear. That the government not only allows us complete freedom, but 95% of Americans couldn't care less what we write. Oh, you lucky Dostoevskys with your firing squads. Imagine shooting an American writer. Exiles, prison camps, nut houses. True, American writers are often regarded as nuts, but as harmless ones. Anyone know the Dostoevsky story? What is he talking about? Who's read anything by Dostoevsky? Anyone? What have you read?
Crime and Punishment a couple of times.
A couple of times, yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, the first time I read it, just for fun, and I like Russian literature, and then I read it in my book club that I do recently. We had it as one of our requirements.
It's cool. It's really cool. Yeah, it's a great novel. Dostoevsky was mock executed. Dostoevsky was accused of the Tsar of plotting some kind of a rebellion, revolt, whatever. I think he was like tangentially involved. It wasn't fair, but he was literally thought he was going to die. It was like, put against the wall and soldiers show up, fire, and nothing. He's mock executed. He talks about the number that does on your head, obviously. And then he was sent to Siberia. And out of Siberia came one of his first books, House of the Dead. And a lot of his great work, right? Demons, and of course the Brothers Cage, most famous one, but Notes from Underground. I would definitely read Notes from Underground. That's my favorite Dostoevsky book. About a guy who imbibes all the Western Enlightenment philosophies and goes nuts and crawls into a hole in the ground, literally. It's like, if you follow this path, it will drive you insane. His kind of argument. He's saying that you lucky Dostoevsky is like, writing matters, like in Tsarist Russia. What you write, like the pen is mightier than the sword. He's bemoaning here. He's like, who cares? That's kind of true. No one cares what people write here. People write obscene stuff, not revolutionary stuff. It's like, whatever, just gonna go back to TikTok. So this book is outdated and yet so relevant today. He's right. Like, to be an American writer, there's nothing at stake. And the most popular American books obviously are the kind of like, Penny Dreadful, whatever, romance novels for the beach, that kind of stuff. How lucky for a writer to, if I write something wrong, I might get executed. And it sounds kind of funny, right? And they think dark humor, but it's like, maybe that does, quicken the pen in some ways. Here's where he likes Covington. Non-place. Page 6. The pleasantest things about Covington are its nearness to New Orleans, which is very much a place, drenched in its identity, history, its rather self-conscious exotica, and its own attractive lack of identity, lack of placeness, even lack of history. Covington. Nothing has ever happened here. No great triumphs or tragedies. In fact, people seldom die. The pine trees are supposed to secrete a healthful ozone that has given Covington the reputation of being, quote, the second healthiest place on earth. All right. So it's just a place like, he can kind of like disappear into his own writing, perhaps, etc. Life in the South, this whole section, that we're going to cover today is Life in the South as a total heading. Chapter 2, New Orleans, Mon Amour, 1968, New Orleans, My Love. What does he say about New Orleans? Do you like New Orleans? Is New Orleans cool? Is it not cool? What do you think about Louisiana? Louisiana is a place of upstanding citizens. Listen to what he says here, page 14. Things get better. There are times when Louisiana was like a banana republic governed by a redneck junta. Is that good or bad? Louisiana is like a banana republic. That's positive, right? Governed by redneck, positive, like military dictatorship. That's awesome, right? All that's good, right? Yeah, no, right? But he says, he's like, and he makes these jokes, right? That like Baptists and Catholics and whatever all took the worst of their stereotypical stuff, and like these Baptist preacher guys with Catholic joy loot the state and stuff. And but he says here, here's the tantalizing thing: New Orleans is by providence or good luck fairly close to making it or to being a habitable place for everybody, and yet is doing little or nothing to close the gap. Which in cities like Detroit, the efforts are strenuous, but the gap is so wide it has not been closed. The South, and he talks about this if you read Moviegoer. Binks Bowling, the main character of Moviegoer, is a 30-year-old stockbroker from New Orleans. And he has to travel to New York, I believe, either New York or Chicago in the novel. I forget which one exactly, maybe Chicago. But he travels north and he flips out. He's like, where is the place? Where are the ghosts? Kind of. He's like, in New Orleans, you feel the weight of like the place, the sense, the rootedness, the history, kind of haunted nature. And north is just kind of like this cold, like antiseptic almost hospital room, like super sanitized. No one's got time for anyone, whatever. Percy is not some kind of chummy guy. What makes Percy so freaking funny is his brutal humor. His like biting, cutting, deeply like barbing humor. Percy's not like, well, I wish everybody could just come and bring the banjos and sit around and talk about, how good everything. Like he's not saying something like that. He's not saying like we should all be like kumbaya, whatever. He's just saying like the South has like a real culture, a real history, a real kind of like something to it, an active ingredient, right? this cream does blank, and 98% is filler, but there's the active ingredient that's the medicine. Like the South has the medicinal part, has something. He talks about, actually in New Orleans, race relations were very interesting. The historian Eric Foner talked about this in his book Reconstruction. A lot of different, when I was researching for my first academic book, Civil War history, the South, called Catholic Confederates, I was shocked, pleasantly surprised. Look at how much racial harmony existed in New Orleans. It was awesome. It's like there was a lot of orders of black nuns, black priests, blacks and whites worshiping together. Sadly, the South has this, very much checkered past and racist past and segregation. Like New Orleans, actually, in many ways, like it's a huge community of free people of color or Creole descent, and it was very much a melting pot. Percy kind of makes that point. New Orleans is a very melting pot thing here. And he talks about the first black Catholic bishop in the U.S. was installed in New Orleans. Yeah, Bishop Harold Perry, who served His Excellency did from 1975 to 91, I believe. And he talks about this other archbishop, right? This white guy, Philip Hannon, this European, is a man acutely aware of the needs of the poor and of the scandal of preaching the gospel in air-conditioned churches to people who have no inside toilets. Aware of the needs of the poor and the scandal of preaching the gospel in air-conditioned churches to people who don't have inside toilets. New Orleans is a very dirty city often. I mean, it's got a reputation of just kind of graffiti and whatever, but there's a kind of Christian communal cohesiveness there, he's saying. We don't have the stereotype in America, the air-conditioned mega church where us versus them. And we're the super affluent people and we have our lattes and we talk about the gospel, but ew, please don't touch me, poor person kind of stuff. He's like, no, in New Orleans, very gritty, very whatever, blacks, whites, everyone kind of together. There's a lot of there's a lot of harmony there. If you want a really good book on kind of the misappropriation of racism in America, Joseph Crispino and Matthew Lassiter wrote a book called The Myth of Southern Exceptionalism that says, the North was just as racist as the South. And in many ways, of course, chattel slavery is so evil, unjustifiable, and terrible. Of course, that was worse to have that. But, the North, despite not having slavery on the books, was just as racist. And there's actually more divisions off in the North. Like blacks and whites not living together in kind of a harmony, community, whatever. Where New Orleans, Percy upholds, is this city. It's close to making it as this kind of, remember who he is. He's a Catholic. It's kind of Catholic ideal, universal ideal. We're all brothers and sisters, got to kind of bear it together, whatever. What does he say is the coolest public celebration that displays this? He's like, this shows the heart of New Orleans. What is it?
Mardi Gras.
Right, Mardi Gras. What is right and valuable about Carnival in New Orleans is that it's a universal celebration of public occasion by private, social, neighborhood groups. It is thus an organic, viable folk festival, perhaps the only one in the United States. New Orleans, people from New Orleans, may joke about politics and war, heaven and hell, but they don't joke about society. What is right and valuable about Carnival, an organic, viable folk festival, perhaps the only one in the U.S. Yeah, if you like Benedictine stuff, I do. I love the Benedictines. Or at Labora, connection to the land. I mean, maybe New Orleans is the place for you. And he says New Orleans is this land defined by what type of architecture? It's the next chapter. What is it?
Pillars.
Yeah.
Well, there's tons of pillars and columns, this kind of neoclassical Greek revivalism. But what kind of actual building? Like football stadiums, gas stations. What defines New Orleans? Cemeteries, right?
Oh, that's right.
The city of the dead. And above ground mausoleums. Exactly. The little cities, are liveliest on All Saints, All Souls days, when families turn out to fix up the family tomb, polishing, whitewashing the stone, scrubbing the doorstep for all the world, like Baltimore housewives scrubbing the white steps in row houses. Huge shout out to the American Rome. Baltimore is the American, everyone understands that, right? Everyone's like, oh, Baltimore, the Wire. Baltimore, the Ravens. Baltimore is the Vatican of America. We're all moving to Baltimore, guys. Just a heads up. It was announced, the Diocese of Boise is now, everyone must move to Baltimore to support the American Vatican. It's a city of the dead, he's saying. In that very Catholic way, Dia de la Muerte, right? In the kind of Spanish tradition, the kind of the true, not celebrating this kind of macabre cultural way how Halloween has been corrupted, All Hallows Eve. the kind of like pray for the souls of the dead. We should, by the way, FYI, Catholics, are you guys praying for the souls in purgatory? You should do that, right? You should be doing that. We should absolutely be praying for the souls in purgatory, praying for the dead, praying for our dead every day. Eyes not seen, ears not heard. How cool would it be if the grandfather that you pray for every single day, who like was a total scumbag, he sucked, and he's got a bunch of time in purgatory, you get him out of purgatory, then when you die, he meets you in heaven, he's like, thanks, let's go party together. It's that great communal thing, all worshiping God, right? I mean, like, God cannot be outdone in goodness, and we're meant to be in community, and I think that's what it means here too. This kind of communion of saints, praying for the dead, remembering the dead. That's very much is New Orleans. Here's my point earlier about Jimmy Carter, page 27, chapter going back to Georgia. Now, a Georgian is president of the U.S., and no one gives it a second thought. He talks about growing up, Uncle Will, before he moves to Greenville, Mississippi, with Uncle Will, but living in Athens, Georgia. He's like, the Georgia of the 1930s, was very, very different than post-war Georgia. How? How specifically? What? Anyone been to Atlanta recently? What do we know about? And this is Percy's gripe in this chapter. By the way, I'd say again, remember, Percy's dates in life. He's born in 1916. So when Percy's talking about 1930s Georgia, that's my 2001, for who was born in 1987, right? How old were you when you were 14? He's 14 years old. He's not talking about 1930s Georgia. That's how old this book is now. He's not talking about 1930s Georgia like my grandfather's time, but like he was already 14 years old, like perfect clear memories, whatever, already a teenager. So he remembers this like very, very well. He's a freshman in high school. 1930s Georgia was still the old world, kind of. A lot of bad parts of the old world. Thank God for the civil rights movement and the end of segregation, of course. There was, the Jim Crow South. That part's bad, but we take the good with the bad. There's also this kind of, he says, the kind of like small community and like, this charm, this kind of nostalgic localism, that the South is the South, it is not other place. So what is his gripe in this chapter? Who remembers? I'm obviously giving away the answer. If the old Georgia was a very distinct place, what has become now, and how does Carter's presidency symbolize that? Who has been to Atlanta recently? Anyone ever been to Atlanta?
Only the airport.
That counts. That for sure counts. It's a very small airport. It's deceivingly big. Just kidding, it's massive. It's enormous. His gripe is that Atlanta is trying to be New York, and so is the South. That's so much of his, like, see you guys, episode over. So much of his reflection of the South. The South is changing. I don't like it. Percy was very progressive on like race. He's very good on race, we'd say. He's very anti-racism. He denounces Mississippi. You see that chapter, Mississippi, the Fall Patterns, for its brutal racism and stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. Percy's not, he is 100% not some kind of guy who's like, oh, I wish it was the old, lost cause stuff. He's not. Like, I mean, he has definitely sympathy for the Confederacy and the kind of the men who fought that war, but Percy was very, very progressive on race. Very good, we'd say. Very like anti-racism. He doesn't mean the old days and those bad things. He means the old days of like, I miss the South, where to be from Georgia meant something. To be from Georgia was, you're a Georgian. It is that Confederate states' rights thing of like, Georgia's my country. Alabama's a foreign country, and so is Tennessee. I'm Georgian. Still, like, I identify with, I'm an Idahoan. Okay, I'm not only am I Idahoan, we have a lot of that in the state actually. People who are very proud, like they have a Facebook group, people from North Idaho. Not only am I Idahoan, I'm from Sandpoint, I'm from Coeur d'Alene. Like, that's very Southern. It's a very Southern attitude. Yeah, I'm American. Yeah, I'm from the PNW, but I'm like, my taxes, state taxes go to Boise, whatever. I'm a Northern Idahoan. I'm a Palouse dweller. That regional identity. That's what he's saying has been washed away. And he's like, now everyone listens to the same music, the same stuff, whatever. And Southern is president, it doesn't matter, because he says people who support or dislike Carter at the time has nothing to do with him being Southern. They don't like that he's liberal on this or conservative. Of course, Carter's anyone doesn't know, he's a Democrat, Democratic Party. And he will be he's president after Ford, president before Reagan comes in for 2 terms. Reagan, of course, being a Republican. People like or dislike Carter independent of his Southernism. And that's what he's saying he doesn't like about these changing times, is that kind of like Southern distinctiveness is going away. Mississippi, the fallen paradise. He talks about, these were good men, an honorable fight. The Confederate soldiers at Gettysburg, Civil War. 100 years later, Mississippians are making history of a different sort. If he says here, if their record in Lee's army is unsurpassed for valor and devotion and duty, present-day Mississippi is renowned for these kind of terrible things, these kind of acts of sabotage, horrible, disgusting, vigilante behavior. etc. And he says that, this is a very cool point, he's like, these things go in ebbs and flows. He really, at this time, this essay is written in, I believe, 61, let me see when. 65, excuse me. And he says he's like, these civil rights activists, James Meredith and Medgar Evers, these African-American civil rights activists are the heroes of this time. The bravest Mississippians in recent years have not been Confederates, right? Or the sons, but these civil rights activists, these two African-American men. So Percy, let's just marry those things right away. It's a very interesting thing. Percy is very pro-Confederate, very pro-Confederate States of America in the Civil War, and very pro-civil rights, pro-African-American civil rights in Mississippi. How can those two things work? Well, that's his vision of the South. That's his Catholic vision of the South. You can respect the men who fought this war. You can respect your traditions and whatever, and you can also be, of course, against all forms of racism and discrimination, etc. And he bemoans the fact that Mississippi, his beloved Mississippi, he grows up in Greenville at his Uncle Will's house, has become this cesspool of true prejudice. But here's what he says, like, it's not always that way. This is 1965. Today, 2026, when he's writing this, and Mississippi is so racist and backwards, you'd assume, oh, well, going back in time, they're just as racist and backwards. No. Listen to what he says about a speech given in 1882 by a guy who fought in the Confederacy. There have been times, for example, when dissent was not only possible, but welcome. In 1882, George Washington Cable, novelist and ex-Confederate cavalryman, addressed the graduating class at the University of Mississippi, quote, "We became distended, mired and stuffed with conservatism to the point of absolute rigidity. Our life had little or nothing to do with the onward movement of the world's thought. We were in danger of becoming a civilization that was not a civilization because there is not in it the element of advancement." End quote. His address was warmly received by the newspapers of the region. It is interesting to speculate how these remarks will be received today at Ole Miss, if indeed Cable will be allowed to speak at all. So that's a great point too he makes, that don't buy the fact, like, everything in the past is more conservative, is more right-wing, is more whatever, and history moves this way towards more progressive. No, this guy in 1880 was more progressive than the guys in 1965. There are a lot of very progressive, very conservative people today. Like, it depends. Percy's work, this is a great call on my part for you to get into Percy's work, challenges you to look at the Catholicity of the human experience. Look at the complexity, the fullness of what it means to be American, Southern, Catholic. Perhaps you're Protestant, of this specific Protestant denomination. What does it mean to be an American Protestant? Like, the whole look at that, and not just fall into kind of trafficking of easy cliches and that kind of thing. Talks about his Uncle Will's house. The astonishment, it did not seem the least extraordinary to find oneself orphaned at 15, adopted by a bachelor, poet, lawyer, planter, and living in an all-male household visited regularly by other poets, politicians, psychiatrists, sociologists, black preachers, folk singers, itinerant harmonica players. One friend came to seek advice on a book he wanted to write, stayed for a year to write it. It was his house, a standard stopover for all manner of people who were trying to, quote, understand the South. And Percy says that as a 15-year-old, his great talent is sitting and listening. And he talks about, this beautiful Uncle Will's house in the Delta in Greenville, Mississippi. And when Uncle Will dies, and he goes back to, he dies much earlier, but he goes back to visit this. In this second part, page 66, 1984, he writes, "It's all gone now. House, garden, Cape Art, Beethoven quartets, pantry, Lorenzo de Medici. I think in its place, are neat little condo villas of strained board and batten siding. Only the garden wall remains. I am not complaining. I have what he left me. I don't mean things." That's super cool. It's super cool to realize there are no self-made men to give props. I've said so many times, I mean this, like, praise God. My father is my personal hero. I really mean that. Without getting all kind of like sycophantic and whatever. Like, I'm serious. I'm so grateful to my dad, both my parents, mom too, for what they've done for me. Like, whatever success I have, it's like, well, glory to God. Like, I'm really grateful to have awesome parents. I hope I'm a good parent to my children. We have influences, whatever. And it's cool. He's like, Uncle Will is a great foster father, we can almost say. St. Joseph, pray for us. In that kind of way. Percy has a very tragic childhood. Both his parents die, orphaned at 15, and Uncle Will takes him in, not just provides daily stuff, he introduces him to the life of culture. And Percy, again, I swear I mean this, I think Percy is the most talented American writer, not just Catholic writer. I hate that. Well, how is that a good comedian? He's a good Catholic comedian or family friendly, so he sucks. How about just comedian, period? Percy, I think, is the best American writer of the past 100 years. I honestly mean that, Catholic or otherwise. He has all the vulgarity and kind of like, I'm going to show you sin that Flannery O'Connor does, but he's way funnier than Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor is way too serious. It's like, lighten up, girl. Come on, please. Like, seriously. Flannery O'Connor is super brooding and dark and like, I don't know. Again, I don't know why I always love like making comments like trolling Flannery O'Connor. She's amazing. She's great. Just for the record, she's absolutely awesome. God bless her. She is so, so amazing. Again, it's probably because of the sycophantic people around her. That's the worst. G.K. Chesterton said the only good argument against Christianity are Christian people. The only good argument against Flannery O'Connor are people who like Flannery O'Connor. It's like not her work. Her work's great. It's just people who like her are so awful.
So you said about Chesterton too.
It's true. And it's like, no, it's like, because like, it's like when you were talking about liking Russian literature, that was really cool. You explained that very beautifully. Like, I like Russian literature a lot. I've read it. We do a book club. That's how it should be. But if you like started a whole like thing around Russian literature and you never shut up about it, and you made like a boutique that was like Dostoevsky's place, like that sucks. You know, that's but that kind of stuff. It's like, oh God, you know, like it's just like I'm feeling like there's nothing hitting me. I feel like I'm being hit in the face with something. It's like, the cringe. You know, it's so bad. I think Percy's the best writer of the past 100 years, maybe not in the world, but certainly in America, I think, okay, maybe second Ernest Hemingway, maybe second, but he's definitely in the top 5, very good. And this whole rambling point that I went on this little detour is, well, thanks to Uncle Will, that's cool. He showed us like this guy who people wanted to come by and see, hey, you have this really impressive, you know, kind of like house on the river, etc., and you're this renowned lawyer, planter, man of arts and culture of the way of the South. People got that in a transient sense passing through. He got to live there and soak all that in. It really informed a lot of his writing. Page 69, interesting about public schools, etc. Better Louisiana. Does not think a prophet to predict what is going to happen if the public schools do not support a master and the educators do not get their act together. Either the schools will continue to decline in quality until they become a de facto adjunct to the welfare system where children of the poor will be warehoused for 12 years. Then dumped into society ill-prepared, a more or less permanent underclass, or taxpayers will finally be fed up. Talks about doing voucher system, etc., whatever. Why are GM cars getting better? Not because of increased government subsidies or higher salaries, because of Toyota. So Percy would have a lot of vouchers. School vouchers are super controversial, right? And etc. And there's so much stuff again with public school, parochial schools, Catholic and other religious schools. And then, of course, the kind of charter school system and vouchers, and that Percy was very for kind of like school choice, school competition, whatever that's worth. He, from page 71, we're almost done, this first section, page 71 through 82, he has 2 chapters in a row on the American War, which, of course, he means the Civil War. The Civil War is 1861 through 65. Percy was then talking about, it was the centennial celebration, commemoration of the war, right? The war was, 61 through 65, he was writing these articles, 57, 61, whatever. He talks about how profitable it was to be a Civil War historian. I like I said again, 98% of things that I talk about, 99, I have no expertise, no knowledge, nothing about. I actually am a Civil War historian. My PhD is in 19th century American history, focused on the Civil War in the American South. I wish what he said today was true. When he's like, you could just like pick a part of the Civil War, something random, Chamberlain on Little Round Top, the second day of Gettysburg, and write a book about it and get a book tour and get a bunch of money. I wish that was the case. Perhaps the excitement has died down, but nonetheless, he talks about the long-standing impact the war had on the men and the region of the time. Writing on page 75, peace is better than war, yet it is a sad fact that some of the heroes of the war, like Grant and Longstreet, many a lesser man, found the peace a long descent in mediocrity. The war infallibly discovered his hidden weaknesses and his hidden strength. War is terrible, war is hell, war is awful. But like Chesterton, Percy saw a lot in war that was kind of revelatory towards human character, pro or con. And then he bemoans in the second part, there's 2 chapters on this Civil War, right? Red, white, and blue, gray, the second part here. That first essay was 57. This second one is written in 1961, 4 years later, right around this 61. The recording stayed on though, guys. That's cool. Don't go out. It's still staying on. There we go. Sick. That's legit. That's cool. When I clip that in there, I'm gonna double clip that. Boom, boom. Like that's legit. That's like.
Just making sure people are awake.
Exactly. Come on. Yeah, seriously, guys, wake up. Wake up, please. At this time, it's already close to the 100-year celebration of, commemoration of the war. And Percy, like Chesterton, again, saw some value in war. And I think he was really, and I picked Percy for his own sake, as did Chesterton as well. But Percy was very influenced by Chesterton in general. If you really want to know what I'm talking about, who here has read Orthodoxy? If you've read Orthodoxy, read Lost in the Cosmos. It reads like a sequel written 75 years later. Orthodoxy by Chesterton, 1908, lays out all these kind of problems, whatever kind of stuff. Walker Percy's Lost in the Cosmos, this parody on self-help, 75 years later, has a very, very similar, interpretive lens towards human nature. And the idea of exiles and this valley of tears, these Catholic 101 type points where we're aliens, sojourners on earth. So with war, with kind of overall psychology, philosophy, there's perhaps a debt owed there as well to Chesterton. The chapter I'm going to finish with is Stoicism in the South. The last 20 pages leading us up to page 107, because next time I'll pick up with 2, science, language, and literature. That's a long section that will divide in half. Remember, we're going to have either 4 or 5 classes on Percy. The recording's at 40 minutes right now. It'll end up being, I think, probably about 3 hours and a half, maybe, or something more by the time we're done. I want to combine it in one video. Because I like that. It's cool. So it'll run that whole length. We're going to do either 4 or 5 classes. I haven't looked at. I think it's called Mirai Caritatis on the Eucharist. I don't know how long that encyclical is. We've read some Leonine encyclicals like Rerum Novarum that were 75 chapters. It might be like 6 chapters. It might be very, yeah. So we might even do that as an addendum, like finish Percy in the same day, just, whatever, and I'll combine them and have when I post this video, Walker Percy featuring, Pope Leo at the end, kind of, we'll see. The last couple things, Southern View, Percy responding to an article, but I'll save this for you. The last chapter I want to finish with that is actually the 4 chapters before this break point, page 83, Stoicism in the South. Anyone read this and what he said about it? Very controversial, interesting. Anyone know what Stoicism is? What is Stoicism? What does it mean to be Stoic? Stoic.
And to not be overly emotional.
Right. The great philosophers of Stoicism, probably most famous, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, but also Seneca, another Roman guy. Seneca earlier than Marcus Aurelius. Seneca is writing around right around the time of Christ. Marcus Aurelius is like 180 AD or something. Doing the right thing, doing your duty, about doing your duty especially. Robert E. Lee, I read a great biography of Robert E. Lee by Douglas Southall Freeman. Robert E. Lee dies 5 years after the war. In 1870, he's president of Washington College. It's now called Washington Lee University. He's already then super legendary figure, mythological figure almost, like this, the Great Lee, the Southern General. A woman comes up to him and has a baby in her arms. She's like, General Lee, give me some advice. How should I raise my son? And he says to her, teach him to do his duty. That's his advice. That's very Stoic. That's Stoic 101. As Catholics, we can say, discern what you're supposed to do and do it. Do the right thing. His controversial point is, the South is called the Bible Belt. He's like, the South actually has more of a pagan influence of Stoicism, Greek and Roman virtues that are kind of pre-Christian. Interestingly, because the South is so Baptist, Methodist, Bible Belt. Listen to what he says. The greatness of the South, with the greatness of the English squirearchy, had always a stronger Greek flavor than it ever had a Christian. Its nobility and graciousness was the nobility and graciousness of the old Stoa. How immediately recognize the best of the South in the words of the emperor. Every moment think steadily as a Roman and a man, to do what thou hast in hand with perfect and simple dignity, a feeling of affection, freedom, and justice. It is true that he was raised on the Christian chivalry of Walter Scott, but it was a Christianity which was aestheticized with medieval trappings and a chivalry which is abstracted from sacramental setting. He says later how people get mad. Some Southerners, the Southerner is confused and outraged when Christian teaching is applied to social questions. It is as if a gentleman's agreement had been broken. He does not want the argument on these grounds, but first talk about a way of life, states' rights. So it's like, it's very interesting. He's like, the Southern gentleman is like happy to have his Christianity, the typical Southerner, who's not Percy, not Flannery O'Connor, our Catholic stars of the South, that everyone understands. The South, despite having an indigenous Catholicism going back to the Spaniards and the French and all that, is the Bible Belt. It's very Protestant. How interesting is that? He's like, the stereotype is, though, the Southern preacher with his Bible, the Southern guy actually, the Southern man, the Southern honor code is actually pagan. It's actually Greek and Roman Stoicism more than Christianity. Hence why it's like, actually, the idea, this is not a Catholic point he's saying. Catholics believe, no, like Christ for everything. Christ is King and Lord of all parts of life. Of course, the gospel should be applied to the, social questions and everything. The Southern gentleman's like, well, religion is kind of a private matter, and be a gentleman about it and attend church dutifully and wear your Sunday best. But after that, we have a gentleman green society, there's separate spheres. Like, that's interesting, right? That's interesting. It's not often talked about. And it's, great insider information from a true Southerner. And he kind of bemoans that. He's like, maybe the reason that the South, he loves Southern traditionalism, but why is the South stuck in the past? He's like, in some ways, because they have this Stoic code, this proper way of doing things. It is not Christian. It is not Christian. It is Greek and Roman. It'd be very recognized by Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and Pericles and whatever, the Athenian Golden Age, but it's not Christian. It's not Christian. And before I sound like I'm not saying that's good or bad, no, I want everything to be Christian. Obviously, as a devout believer, like Christianity, Christ is Lord. Like, when I say it's not good or bad, I mean, like, I'm not saying as a criticism, as a fact. Like, au contraire to all people think the Bible Belt is just people thumping Bibles and they're just citing Matthew. The old Southern way of life, again, final point as we sign off today, was more pre-Christian Greek paganism and doing your duty in these Aristotelian virtues than it was the gospel. And we move on to the second part next time. Until then. You what?
Met a toddler named Aristotle.
Aristotle.
Yeah, long time ago.
That's cool. Well, the recordings tell me I have 36 minutes and 45 seconds left of tape, so that's going to be it, I guess. Yeah, no, really, thanks, phone. Thank you for nothing plan. Whatever I don't even know what my plan is. What plan do you have? Like phone plan? I don't know. Percy, let's now do the kind of like, I'm back in the blue suit because people watching on YouTube, I started the blue suit, then I did the tan suit for 45 minutes and back in the blue suit. March 31st, 24th, 31st, and then I'm going to do street clothes later, like I said, chilling in front of a dumpster. I should stop hyping this. I'm probably not going to do this later. I'm probably not going to be able to find a garbage can in front of which to record. So, but there'll still be one more part that's added on at the end, talking about his other works, because I want this whole thing to be all about Walker Percy. There are people who do freaking, things online, like, Chesterton in 20 minutes. This is 2 hours long. So just, that's long enough, right? Section 2, Science, Language, and Literature. What's the most important part of this section? He starts off as a theory of man possible. Going back to his thing about, Percy's thing about wanting to be the diagnostician novelist, etc. Percy says all the old theories of man often are well worn, and they're just not, people aren't willing to listen to them. And Percy, I think, is very much of the new evangelization, even unwittingly, what Pope John Paul II talked about, Pope St. John Paul the Great. We have to, like St. Paul says, be all things to all men. If you just come up to someone and say, hey, I want to talk to you about the Bible, I want to talk to you about Jesus, praise God. But people are just going to be like, no, I've heard that a million times. You got to find new ways, new things. That's why his whole new ways to talk about the everlasting truth. That's why his whole obsession with apocalyptic stuff. He's like, if we found ourselves in a wasteland, post-nuclear war, walking around, there probably wouldn't be a lot of sarcasm. There'd probably be a lot of sincerity and naming things simply, and this means that, and etc. And a cleansing kind of, that's the whole thing with the Dark Ages. Dark Ages are this great tragedy, cataclysm, and end of Rome, and yet there is something like a born-again Christian idea of now we can start over, the slate is wiped clean. He loves language. He thinks people should be called homo loquitur, not homo sapiens. Sapientia, knowledge. We're not the knowledgeable things, we're the speaking things. That which separates man, most of all, is this, is speech. And so what does that matter for novelists? I mean, do I have to finish a sentence? I mean, if you're a novelist and a writer, that's why he says, I don't think he's being self-referential. The fact that we're homo loquitur means novelists and writers have the greatest potentiality to make a difference because all we care about are signs and symbols and communication. He says here on page 129, here's the beginning of a theory of man as a semiotician might see him. Man is that creature who transacts with his fellow creatures and with the elements of his environment just as other organisms do, but in a unique way. Unique both in structure and function. Okay, so man is the symbolic, sign-making, linguistic, transactional creature. Okay, and that's what it means to be man. And so I will take up my novel writing, Percy says, with that great joy and hope. Let's start piecing together again parts of Walker Percy. I'm a believing Catholic who comes from a scientific background as a medical doctor. If I'm serious about what Christ says, go and make disciples of all nations, I will be with you to the end of the world, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This, St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 28, Great Commission. Well, people don't want to hear this stuff anymore. It's sad. They've heard it all. They've heard the Bible school stuff. Oh, we are sign creatures. We are symbol creatures. There is no such thing as a primitive language. Oh, I'm in the business of language transactions. I will write stories by which to glorify God and bring people to the truth, but I can't do the traditional way. And I won't do it to make you feel good. I don't care if you're mad. I'm not going to edify you. I'm going to show people as they are, diagnose them. And when I diagnose, fist bump to Pope Leo, his diagnosis now in 2026 of people being overwhelmed by AI, we will find a way out of this. Find a way unto, Christ and the truth. The Christ, truth, Christ, the church, truth, just kind of, John 10:10, I've come to give them life and they have it abundantly. Percy is given the Laetare Medal at University of Notre Dame in 1989 for his contribution to Catholic stuff. And a year before he dies. And the citation, I remember watching the video, was you have cast a wry eye on modernity. And person giving him citation was you have been a great diagnostician. You have shown us what the problem is of the 20th century. If you guys are interested in this, I'm telling you, in this theme, I'd really get into Walker Percy. I am an idiot, and I could just go through and read this, and who cares? Go to the original sources. All the people, Catholics, Protestants, everyone wants to talk about ad fontes, to the sources, to the founts of the stuff. Go back and read the church fathers. Or if you're Protestant, don't, because you'll stop being Protestant. So maybe don't do that. You'll realize all of them are Catholic. And that you'll be like, that sucks. But you'll actually do, because of course we want you to come to the fullness of truth. So please do. Go to the ad fontes, Walker Percy. Go to the original source. Read him for yourself. And I'm telling you, I honestly think he has as much to say in 2026 as he did back in the 1990s. It's worse now. In the 1990s, the internet was just coming online. There was no social media. There was no AI. There was no chat GPT. So all the problems of the dehumanization of people, just numbers on a board, whatever. Talks about the dislocation of a Southern novelist. He kind of whines about this for a long time. Cool, dude, whatever. But he basically says, no, I'm telling you, I cannot like Walker Percy. I don't know why I'm even being fake snarky as a joke. But he is very concerned with that. He's a Southern novelist. He's Southern through and through. He makes a hilarious joke, though. I love this when he roasts other Southerners. So freaking funny. I have tertiary Southern status. I am not a Southerner. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm not a secondary Southerner like Mike. I don't have a grandmother. But I lived in Mississippi for 5 years. I was actually there for a long time. That's where I did my whole graduate work. Both my wife and I. Our first son was born there. So it's not I went to the Georgia coast, the Alabama coast, Gulf Coast for a weekend trip, or I went to New Orleans once. I've lived in Mississippi for 5 years, half a decade. And this is so freaking funny because he's right. What I'm gonna tell you next, he's Southerners do have some of them that's kind of inflated. If you want to understand the South, you got to sit on a bench and listen to old guys talk for a million years. And Percy's I never did that. He's all the William Faulkner stuff was you got to just sit and listen to people spin yarns about the old days, quote unquote, his words. He's I grew up on a golf course, in a nice suburb, whatever. He's and of course that's not exactly, it's Percy, come on, man. His earlier point was talking about how he grew up in Greenville, Mississippi in Uncle Will's house, which is very much the old guy at a bench for a million years, the man of letters, the gentleman bachelor lawyer, so whatever. But he's basically saying he thinks it's not so much important in the Southern tradition to put it on in some fake way. What's important is the authenticity the South does offer that I will nod my head to. It's right. The kind of haunted character of the South, the ghosts of the South, this kind of Confederate mist still hanging over the place, the grand Civil War. Yeah, He gives huge shout out, page 222, to Eudora Welty in Jackson. This is pretty sick. She has lived, sick as in cool, SICC. Wow, people are like, what a freaking tool. Like about me, like what a millennial tool bag. Using like 1998 skater lingo. I never rode a skateboard in my life. I rode a skateboard in my life once, and I realized like this is the dumbest thing of all time. And then I never did again. But this is like skater lingo, so I'm sorry. She has lived all her life in a place and written there, and the writing bears more than accidental relation to the place. The time is coming when the American novelist will tire of his angelism, will wonder how to get back into a body, live in a place, at a street address. Eudora Welty will be a valuable clue. What does that mean? In Love in the Ruins, remember, he invents a contraption to how much angel, how much beast are you? It's Dr. Thomas More. And then we have to, make you right, because to be human is to be an amalgam, a combination of angel and beast. You have a soul and a body. This is huge props. Eudora Welty, amazing Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, Southern writer. He's like, be like her, be like Flannery O'Connor in Georgia, rooted in a certain region. I would never put myself in the company of these writers. I would never say I, myself, deserve to be in the company of Walker Percy, Flannery O'Connor. I'm obviously so much better than them. But in my own writing, in my own Hippo lectures, those of you guys that have attended I will say I'm happy that, to have such a grand writer as Walker Percy confirm this, someone who I truly feel, is a million miles above me, confirm something that I've been onto myself. All my talks and Hippo lectures, my stories, like Mark and Anna models, Sarah from the Dust Plague, the recent lost history of Pullman, take place in this area. And that's not as a bone to people here. I don't care. Vandal Catholic people are super smart. They're going to like the story if they like fiction or not. They'll like it just the same if it's in Moscow or if it's in New York. I like this region. It's Eudora Welty. It's like, oh, cool. So again, writers that, I hope to be like 1/4 of one day or 1/100th, so much greater than me. If they're all about being a real place, I feel very excited with my own personal writing to have stumbled upon that too. So much of my work takes place in this region. Because I know this region. I could talk about the nooks and the crannies. Sarah from the Dust Plague is a disaster novel that goes through downtown Moscow like a tornado dust storm. I can describe all the stuff there, the communities, the fights on Friendship Square between the liberals and the conservatives. And so I agree with him. Like being rooted in a place does give you some kind of authenticity, He talks about his intro to Confederacy of Dunces. Anyone ever read that? Confederacy of Dunces, he talks about if Aquinas went to pot, the fat Aquinas Slav guy goes to New Orleans and critiques modern society. It's a very comic novel by this guy, John Kennedy Toole. Percy talks about the story behind that. If you didn't read it, well, shame on you. Go back and read that chapter. Let's talk about the last section, morality and religion. Okay? I really have, I think, exhausted your attention span all about Walker Percy, and I haven't even gotten to the garbage can yet. So it's like, to recap before we do the final section, I promise I won't do a recap at the end, in this blue suit at least. I won't. Remember, Walker Percy, his entire corpus, my argument why you should read him, is if you like science, he was a medical doctor. If you like faith, he was a practicing devout Catholic, devout Christian. He's both. He's 2 in 1. That's pretty cool. And not a parody of either. He's not the Bible bashing, I'm just going to quote scripture to you and be super positive, prosperity gospel type Christian guy. Nor is he kind of this obviously he's not an atheist, scientist, whatever, etc. He's very kind of balanced. And I think that's the whole argument why you should read Walker Percy. Not only is he hilarious and a great stylist, he's an amazing writer. What does my opinion count for? I mean, again, literally nothing. For real, I'm not being fake, modest. Who cares what I think? I think most will agree if you read this, that he writes very, very well. Even from this book, he writes, it's a great flow. It's pleasurable to read, which matters a lot. Percy says at one point, when he's receiving an award for moviegoer, the first job of the novelist is to entertain. So he doesn't have to edify you. It doesn't have to be a story, look how good things are. But it should be entertaining. It should be interesting. If it's not, why am I reading this, right? My grandmother had a rule, never pick up a book that you don't intend to finish. But it's like, Grandma, come on. With all due respect. And God rest her soul. What an amazing woman. Amazing woman. Seriously, a boss woman. But I will not criticize her, but criticize his point. It's like, what if you pick up the book and it sucks? You have to finish it. Really have to grind through the next. Percy's books are very exciting. They're good. They're fun to read, but that's the whole point. It's the Pope Leo AI point. We live in a technological world where science has all the answers, and we've sadly, blessed be God forever, made science into an idol. This kind of science idolatry, scientism. What is it like to be a human being, flesh and blood person living in this time? He has the answers. It's amazing. His whole work. And I'll in that last part, in the street clothes part, what if I reversed it though? What if I keep saying street clothes, but instead of doing a garbage can, I do like in front of like a Ritz-Carlton in the tuxedo. Like that's the last part. In the last part, I'll name some of his books. And this is easily accessible anywhere online, but like Thanatos Syndrome, Lost in the Cosmos. He has something about Will Barrett, I forget the name of that. I think it's like the Lancelot or something like that. The Last Gentleman. I have not read that one. He wrote 6 novels in total, many essays. That's my whole argument for why you should read him. Morality and religion, any important points here. Why are you Catholic? Anyone read this on page 304? This is interesting here. What do you say here? Since one is obliged, Loretta, you're right. I told people we're going to do this in 4 classes. I'm doing it in 2. I've changed it as a disgusting czar tyrant without consulting with anyone. Obviously so anti-democracy. And I just said, whatever. But so no, it's actually cool doing this now. No, finish the book out if you'd like, right? There's no, for this class, I love this class so much. I love this job so much, praise God. No punchline incoming, just full stop. But there are no assignments or whatever. It's just love of intellect. So it's like, finish the book if you want, and if you don't, who cares? If you haven't, you picked up the book, so what? I'm glad you're here. People online, if you just want to listen to the points here, also, there's no rules here. I've said many, many times, I am very much a postmodern. May God help me be a good Catholic. I want to be a devout Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. God help me be a good one. I am very much a postmodern. Yeah, there's no rules. Like read the book like this if you want. Like just see if you can get laughs sitting outside in French Square reading it upside down. See if anyone comments. And read it with like a weird mirror so where you can see it actually normal. People just think you're an idiot, like do whatever you want. Why are you Catholic, Walker Percy? Since one is obliged by ordinary civility to give a response, temptation is to utter a couple of sentences, get over with, and let it go at that, such as, I am a Catholic, or if you like, a Roman Catholic, a convert to the Catholic faith. The reason I am a Catholic is that I believe that what the Catholic Church proposes is true. That's the best answer ever. That's why you should answer. Why are you Catholic? Because it's the truth. There's no other reason. It doesn't matter how good or bad the music is. We're very lucky. Like I said, Father Chase is awesome. He gives great homilies. He's a great pastor. We have good musicians. If there's not good homilies, not good music, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Is it the truth or not? If it's not the truth, you shouldn't be it. If it is, you should be. That's it. That's a great answer. Percy converted from atheism, and he says, you never know the effect you have on people. He says in a book that I read, I think Message in the Bottle, he's like, it was his roommate that affected him most. When Percy was still an atheist, his roommate would get up every morning to go to Mass, and his roommate did not bother him or, hey, do you want to come with me? That just example was weird. Like, why does this guy care so much about this thing? And it ended up leading him to look into that. We talk about providence, very cool. That's it. Don't give me this stupid 9-hour testimony. Shut up. I don't care. Like, that's important to you. I don't care about this. All I want to hear, if I'm an atheist, is you believe it's true. If you don't actually believe it's true, I don't care how good the coffee hour is, how happy you feel about stuff, whatever. Like, is it true or not? That's right. One of the tasks of the saint, page 306, one of the tasks of the saint is to renew language, sing a new song. The novelist has a humbler task. He must use every ounce of skill, cunning, humor, even irony, to deliver religion from mere edifying. There you go. That's amazing. The job of the novelist is the job of the saint, to sing a new song about the everlasting truths of Christ and his church, to deliver it from the sentimentality of, let's go to this Catholic conference, just be like, we love God. That's cool, that's fine. And first of all, Catholic conferences are not my thing. May God help me, may God give me the grace to be so on fire for God. Praise God. I do not like we're all Catholics, kumbaya. It's like, please punch me as hard as you possibly can. In the bridge of the nose, ideally. Just over and over again. I hate that kind of like over-emotive stuff. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I like Walker Percy so much. He's so not like that. That is the job of the novelist/novelist saint, may God help him, to sing a new song for people to hear this message that they think they've heard a million times in a new way that affects their life. What time is it, guys? It's like 45 already? Is it exactly 45? Exactly. I'm a genius, guys. I tell you every time I'm a genius, no one believes me. I tell you I know things like the exact time with no clock. There you go. I would love, people that don't know me, I'd love to give a speech somewhere for the first time and actually just unironically be so unbelievably arrogant, like without any kind of joke. In this class, I'll make stupid comments, but immediately laugh and say, I don't mean it, because I don't mean it. And I find that arrogance hilarious. But I'd love to go for a speech. Like, I want to thank you guys all for inviting me, and start off slow, kind of like, I'm a very important person, and I get a lot of invites. So you know, you guys are just very lucky to start to then take it to like terrible extreme levels where I even like paused the talk at one point, talking and said like, I just want to, you know, I just really feel like moved to just talk about me for a second, just like. Just get everyone so angry. Like, why do we invite this idiot? Oh man. Here's the problem, right? Percy says, the modern age has ended. We live in a postmodern as well as a post-Christian age, which as yet has no name. It is post-Christian in the sense people no longer understand themselves as they understood themselves for some 1,500 years, as ensouled creatures under God, born to trouble, and whose salvation depends upon the entrance of God into history as Jesus Christ. So it is the most scientifically advanced, savage, democratic, inhuman, sentimental, murderous century in human history. It's true. 20th century has the worst crimes, genocides, awful stuff, and at the same time, it's kind of over-the-top sentimentality, etc. It is the job of the author, of the novelist, of whomever wishes to take this up to propose these ever-ancient truths, as St. Augustine said, in new language. A cranky novelist reflects on the church. Encourage you to read that chapter. Encourage you to read all of it. The failure and the hope. All right. He talks about different kind of like moral issues, etc. He has a thing here on page 346. If I had 5 minutes with the Pope for a future class idea, and actually my dissertation is on Southern Catholics during the Civil War, and the book is Catholic Confederates. That's what I did my dissertation on. But I originally wanted to do Pope John Paul II's visits to America. If you don't know, Pope John Paul II, I believe, came to America the first time in 1979. Same year I went to Poland the first time, and he comes back in 87. This is written in 1987. Welcome to New Orleans, Your Holiness. These are all online, Vatican.va. I might do this. I might do a class in the future, kind of like, let's just break apart everything John Paul II said while in America. What do you say in Detroit about New Orleans? We're all Americans. We have this great context of like American 1980s, 90s history. You know, kind of pretty cool. So his letter here, 1 through 6. What does he say about the church and what would he say to the Pope? I mean, wouldn't you like to know? Go read that chapter. Number 3, I don't understand this from Percy here. Number 3, page 346. Don't worry about the scientists. They pursue truth from which the church has nothing to fear. Dude, he knows this. He's a university professor too. Carl Wojtyła was a university. What is Percy talking about, man? Welcome to New Orleans, Your Holiness. Percy, just shut up. Like, how about you say nothing to the Pope? I found that chapter very, very interesting. In fact, I think, guys, what's really cool? God bless Walker Percy, my favorite writer of all time. I think there's a photo of Percy with the Pope. Anyone want to look that up? Can someone try to find that? Can someone just put on their phone Walker Percy with Pope John Paul II images? I think when Pope John Paul II comes to New Orleans, he talks in the Superdome. I think there's a photo of him shaking Percy's hand. I think I've seen that before. Let me know if that memory is correct or false. Walker Percy shaking John Paul II's hand. Percy was already considered in 87, close to his death, as one of the most famous American Catholic figures. Is that true? Is there a photo?
Mine's still loading.
Okay. Let me know if you see that. St. John Paul II.
I think so.
I think there's a photo of him with Walker Percy.
He deserved it too. I just got done reading the book when he was part of it.
John Paul II?
He fought back against some of the crap that's going on.
For sure, yeah.
It's actually
Nazism, communism, all this stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. There's a poster.
Okay, I think
That somebody
I
made,
think
but
then
there might be a real picture.
I'm gonna look into this.
I can't find it.
I'm gonna look into this and try to find a way to bring this to the fore.
You can't find a real image that's not painted.
Okay, well, that is what it is. Let's finish the last thing here, guys. Yeah, we're done because epilogue, an interview and a self-interview. You guys can read about that. You guys can. Oh, maybe I'll make some jokes about the self-interview. Questions they never asked me. But last thing, what time is it right now? Is it 52?
50.
Let's go. I'm an idiot now. I've lost all my credibility. Read this. If anyone's interested in Therese of Lisieux, The Little Way, read The Holiness of the Ordinary. Page 368 through 370. And 1989, right before his death. Okay? Such a view of man, a pilgrim whose life is searching and finding. Remember his whole work, right? Walker Percy, we're in agreement. A pilgrim whose life is searching and finding, Such a view of man as a wayfarer is, I submit, nothing else than the recipe for the best novel writing, from Dante to Dostoevsky. Even an excellent atheist novelist like Sartre borrows from traditional anthropology for the upside-down pilgrimage of his characters into absurdity. Okay, that's it. Goodbye. See you guys. Take care. Safe travels. His whole work about pilgrims, wayfarers, and this valley of tears, searching for meaning, especially meaning in a technological AI society. Dang, we have closed the ranks on this pretty tight. Pretty tight. This is cool. I thought we need 4 classes for this book. How about 2 classes? How about that? How long does it take you to get to Spokane? An hour. What if I get there in 10 minutes? Like that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm gonna fly a helicopter I built by myself. An interview, right? Interview with Zoltan Abaginagi. Then the next epilogue is interview with himself. Questions they never asked me. Will you consent to an interview? No. Why not? Interviewers always ask the same questions, such as, what time of day do you write? Do you type or write longhand? Blah, blah, blah. You're not interested in the South. I'm sick and tired of talking about the South and hearing about the South. Do you regard yourself as a Southern writer? That is a strange question, even a little mad. Sometimes I think the South brings out the latent madness in people. It even makes me feel nutty to hear such a question. Do you have any favorite dead writers? None that I care to talk about. Please don't ask about Dostoevsky and Kierkegaard. How about yourself? Would you comment on your own writing? No. Why not? I can't stand to think about it. Could you say something about the vocation of writing in general? No. What are your hobbies? I don't have any. What magazines do you read? None. What are your plans for summer reading? I don't have any. Do you keep a journal? No. Oh, sorry, it's me acting out his turning pages silently. Would you care to say something about your own novels? No. What about your last novel, Lancelot? What about it? What do you have to say about it? Nothing. Okay, he's being really just obnoxious right now, right? Or very hilarious. But actually, this is the true final point. What does he mean by self-interviews kind of thing? What he said, who can tell me? Why is he answering like that? It's not actually for the comedy. That's either, depending on how you feel about it, very funny or very annoying, right? Wow, cool, you know, like interview with myself where I just say no to everything, awesome, real mature. You know, like you either like you feel one or the other about that. But what larger point is he actually making? Who knows? The point he's making, and I agree, is a writer, he or she should write something and stand on that. Okay? They should write it and stand on it. Brad King, you wrote this 900-page novel, this new Dante novel. Like, I shouldn't have to interview you a million times. Like, I'm going to read your novel. That's a huge problem we have in our up-down society today, too. Brad King writes this amazing novel. No one has time to read. No one wants to read. Oh, maybe they'll listen to it, which is not reading, and listen to like the first 100 pages. But they'll have Brad on Joe Rogan and all the different podcasts and talk about it. But he might say exhausting, like, you know, thank you for the exposure, but I don't want to talk about the novel. I put my ideas into the novel. So it's kind of like, what do you have to say about it? So I was right, by the way, too. I said Lancelot's one of his novels. One of his last great ones is Thanatos Syndrome. That one did very, very well. So I think Dr. Thomas More makes a reappearance from Love in the Ruins. What do you have to say about your novel? I have to say to you, read the novel. Like that, you want to know about Lancelot, read the Lancelot novel. I'm going to give you, imagine a very flowery, cooperative answer. That does not suffice to the 200 whatever pages, 400 pages I wrote. If you want to know about the novel, read the novel. So my parting advice to you guys is read Walker Percy. Stop talking about him as I've done hypocritically for 2 hours now. Wow. Oh, you want us to stop talking, but you can talk about him. I already said before, guys, I have no problem saying you guys can't do stuff that I can do. So I can keep talking about it as much as I want. But everyone else, stop talking about him and actually go read his work. All right, guys. So that closes our All About Walker Percy episode. And there's only one more episode of Maple Syrup History left to go for this season, this spring semester. This still very frigid, very please bundle up in appropriate winter gear spring semester, so-called spring semester. I feel like I've hit all the high notes multiple times, but I promised you a kind of concluding note, just summing up Walker Percy. I'll just say what I just said in the classroom. Walker Percy is the best Catholic writer of the 20th century, probably the best Catholic writer in a long, long time. He was not comparing himself to Dante and St. Augustine, but I certainly will. why should you read Walker Percy? In addition to what I said in the class, that he is a fantastic stylist, an incredible writer, just for the sake of the artistic appreciation of being a good writer, and he's enjoyable. And as he said, when accepting that award for the moviegoer, if the novelist doesn't make it interesting, doesn't entertain you, he's failing. So he's very entertaining, he's very interesting, he's unique. His uniqueness lies in the fact that he himself says, and I agree 100%, the job of the writer is not to edify you. It's not to make you feel good, to make you feel happy. It's to diagnose the problem in society as it is. And he's so important now in 2026, more so than when he was writing decades ago, because his diagnosis was, what is it like to live as a man, as a woman, as a person in an age when technology and technological advancements have made everything better than ever before, and yet there's more sadness and dislocation, and the large questions go ever unanswered. What is it like to be a man living in a time when technology is better than ever and everything is being subsumed into technological progress and the like? How do we live? And he diagnoses this alienation, these age-old existential questions in very fresh, new ways. Just fantastic. You can look up his bibliography. We've just, finished reading Signposts from a Strange Land. If you like that, I'd recommend Message in a Bottle. Another book, it's kind of a nonfiction collection of essays. If you really like nonfiction, read Lost in the Cosmos, a book that is a parody on self-help, what he calls the last self-help book that you will ever need. So Lost in the Cosmos, Signposts, this book that we were discussing now, and Message in a Bottle for nonfiction. For his fiction, of course, begin with Moviegoer, his 1962 National Book Award winning work, Thanatos Syndrome, from late in his career, late in his life, 1980s, is fantastic. But I would say number one, if I've given you 3 nonfiction, here's 3 fiction. In addition to Moviegoer and Thanatos Syndrome, I would read Love in the Ruins. Love in the Ruins, the adventures of a bad Catholic at the end of the world, or at the end of time, whatever the subtitle is. Regardless, I would really, really encourage all people to dialogue with Walker Percy and see how in the age of AI and technological advancements run amok, and these questions are more relevant than ever, why his work is more relevant than ever.